a beautiful mess. Those words are the best three I can think of to describe the Tron universe. From a technical standpoint, it's marvelous, with the insanity of the graphics and other VFX in 1982, then an improvement-minded sequel in 2010, creating a new world of neon beauty and EDM music. The Tron franchise has showed off elements of greatness. Unfortunately, once you try and think about the internal logic of these movies, as I tend to do being a YouTuber, everything falls apart. Any type of merit to these films start with the base idea and end with the look and sound. It's a shame that a little more thought wasn't put into these films. They really could have been movies that not just have value in concept, but ones that actually apply real-life themes and consequences to an unimaginable world. Or, at the very least, play by rules that make some goddamn sense. Watch just how broken this universe's rule set is. And maybe you Daft Punk fans can understand why I cannot think positively about these films. Starting with the original Tron, let's talk about the single most damning inconsistency in this whole movie: Kevin Flynn's mental state. Now, I know this is a movie marketing towards kids of the 70s and 80s, but why does Flynn not have one single moment of fear after being transported to a new realm? I mean, come on. Homie goes on a virtual DMT trip, then materializes in a code-based world thought to be just ones and zeros, but is actually full of programmed sentience and power structures trippy enough to send Terrence McKenna into an existential crisis. And Flynn is just sitting there like, yeah, man. Buddy, you realize the programs you've made and deleted are, like, real, right? This means you've massacred these types of people your whole life, and now you're stuck in their world, a world that you don't understand, and you promptly see other beings dying, de-rezzing in. How are you not freaking the fuck out? Not to mention, you're seeing the video games you made being used as Hunger Games type trials for programs. You're complicit in all of this. You should be scared that you're stuck here in the first place, but also, if you give more than a second of thought to what you've done to the grid, you are both their god and their devil. But mostly their devil, because you've been sacrificing motherfuckers trying to break into the mainframe. At first, I was like, maybe Flynn thinks this is just a dream. But the further you go, the more it becomes clear, Flynn knows this is life or death. And he knows he's the creator. He has plenty of cryptic lines trying to hide that fact the whole film. To just casually put aside the fact that our main character is chill about being transported to a new and unknown universe, one that has been at the control of Flynn and other humans for its lifespan, is a difficult thing for me to do. Especially when Flynn becomes portrayed as an actual god to these people. You see many programs in the grid worshipping the users, which of course was Flynn himself up until a second ago. So there's a huge Jesus allegory going on here that the writers are not afraid to play into. As Ram is dying, in a way that makes no sense considering all death has been immediate de-rezzing up until this point, calm, Geo, calm. Flynn comforts Ram in his final moments by revealing that he is indeed a user. So as Ram fades out, he is literally with his version of Christ, which is a sweet moment if you can ignore the fact that Flynn used Ram's kindness and knowledge to serve his purpose of proving that Dillinger stole his code. This would be like if Jesus used the apostles not to spread the word of God, but to gather evidence that Rome plagiarized his teachings. There are so many more religious allegories here that I just don't want to hit on. The broken Jesus similarities somehow aren't even the biggest problem in this world. The biggest has to be what programs actually are. This is where the rules of our grid go even further out of our understanding. And I hate it. Programs seem to have a sort of transferred consciousness from their maker. So Alan's programs look and act like Alan, Laura's programs look and act like Laura, and so on. When the questions come in are, of course, when you start thinking deeper. First of all, if programs come into being directly from their human counterpart, how are they not all having an existential crisis? Is that explained by them being a lesser consciousness? In that case, isn't what Flynn's doing to these people a bit predatory? Especially when it comes to the kiss with Laura's program named Yori. Wouldn't that be like Jesus getting it on with a normal person? Oh, wait. Seriously though, this whole connection with Flynn and Yori seems to imply that love can either transcend code or is programmed in. If not, Flynn is being a real dick stealing Alan's real life and virtual girlfriend. I kinda plan to touch on the story more coherently, but at this point I just hope you've seen the movie, because if not, now I'll bet you don't want to. To bring it back to the story real quick, let's talk about the ending, which, of course, makes no fucking sense. In a crappy Jesus-like moment of sacrifice, Flynn leaps into the MCP and somehow fixes everything. The finale of the film basically solidifies that these people don't know anything about computers and would rather point towards divine intervention. Up until this point, Tron pretended to follow some type of broken logic. But then Flynn just jumps, and that jump apparently reboots the entire digital universe, restores order, kills the MCP, frees Tron, and somehow uploads proof of Dillinger's plagiarism back in the real world. Yep, that's Tron, ladies and gentlemen. Now for the second film, how exciting. Tron Legacy does its best to correct many of the blaring errors in the first film. Emphasis on does its best, because you really can't fix the unfixable. Flynn's reaction to entering the grid is kind of fixed, with his son Sam being pretty freaked out. Plus, knowing that it existed before gives a reason not to enter into panic mode. The religious subtext is less in your face, with Flynn being more of a mythical figure and less of an on-the-nose Jesus allegory. And, I'm sorry, but did I say that Tron Legacy corrects many of the previous issues? I really meant it barely corrects any and adds even more inconsistency. Let me just fire these off, because trust me, you don't want to hear this story either. Time inside the grid is not defined, so how do we know what time passed? Derezzing rules are still fucked up. Sometimes a program disappears instantly, other times parts remain. Gravity and air exist in a world that wouldn't make sense to have them. ISOs are emergent life, adding the question of how, and what does that mean for existing programs? Are they even less sentient than we thought they were? There's more open communication between the grid and the real world, using a pager. Not explained. An ISO can materialize in the real world. How? And this ISO isn't freaked out at all when they materialize, even though their counterpart is nowhere near them. Why does Tron break his programming as the Rinsler? Who knows? How does Flynn merging with Clue fix everything? Apparently with the same endgame logic as the first movie. Why would Flynn not code in some sort of override on Clue? Seems stupid, considering he has the same power as you, apparently. This whole movie is operating out of narrative convenience and coolness. It doesn't have a single regard as to how any choice affects the whole. Damn, that movie almost sounds worse than the original when it's layered. Not quite. I'm not even done with the first one yet. Why do programs have biological functions? How did the orange from the beginning come back immediately when it must have been spawned far from the MCP? Why can Flynn manipulate the environment sometimes, but not others? If the MCP can take over programs, why is it operating externally till the end of the movie? Plus, why is the MCP's power sometimes all-controlling, and other times getting walked on by Dillinger and men with frisbees? Why is the grid so large and able to store so many games that are surely kept on different databases? Why does Flynn's goal of proving corruption and Tron's goal of taking down the MCP align so perfectly? Why does a single printout claiming that Flynn made a game get Dillinger fired? You didn't ever actually access the mainframe, so there's no way that's enough evidence. I'm sorry if you're getting bored listening to me fire off all these seemingly obvious problems, but I just can't watch these movies without thinking about this stuff. You have such a cool concept, yet you throw it all away to make it easier to write narratives within. Before I go, let me just rattle off a couple more huge inconsistencies across both films. How does the grid exist? What are the physical laws of the virtual world, and why? What can users do and not do? And finally, why do we make movies that give out more questions than answers? That one is to both teams working on these films. You can't expect to satisfy a viewer by making unexplainable concepts. Or maybe it's just me. I don't know. Like I said, from a technical standpoint, these films are so freaking cool. I implore you to look up how they did the first movie. It's literally hand-drawn animation over real sets. It's insane. For me, though, I will not be watching these films again, because I know I'm just going to think deeper and have more unanswered questions, which will lead to me being very angry. If you're somebody who likes these movies, I'm very sorry I went this far to shit on them. They really do have merit when you turn your brain off. I'm sorry, okay? I'm not trying to be rude. I simply cannot stand to see a franchise that is built off of laziness in the writer's room. In 1982, you could actually look past all these rule set errors. It really was that groundbreaking. But now, the curse of time leaves me lost in a place where logic derez decades ago. And with that, thank you, Jessica, specifically you, Jessica. And of course, to everyone else who watched this one, thank you. As much as I might have gotten angry while recording this, I actually did enjoy making the video. The movies were semi-fun to watch, you know, trying to look past everything, I guess, while I was in the moment. And then afterwards, it was definitely fun to just poke holes in them everywhere. If you're like me and you enjoy taking down something that you don't like, then you might be able to understand why I did enjoy the process. Unfortunately, for the Fresh Out the Film podcast, we will not be doing Tron Ares, but I do want to give a shout out there. This is, like I said, the Fresh Out the Film podcast. Me and my sister go into a movie theater, get out of the movies, go to the car, and we turn on the mics immediately when we get in. Try to capture a lot of that energy from the theater, and it's just a grand old time. So please go ahead and check it out on Spotify only. Not for long, though. But yeah, I think we're done here. So, deuces.
Electric Avenue.